How has Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott performed in training camp so far? All that and more this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your
Locked
daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast
Locked
Network, your
On.
team every day.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool out in Oxnard, California, covering the Dallas Cowboys training camp practices. Go follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, how are you doing today, sir?
We're here. Today is not the first day of practice, but the first padded practice, which, basically is the first day of practice.
Exactly.
So I'm excited. I can't wait to get out there, and there's lots to see. And obviously I was out there on Saturday too, so I saw a little bit during that practice. So I'm excited to talk about all of it.
Yeah, let's talk about that Saturday practice because I actually got to see a good chunk of it. It was on NFL Network.
Yeah.
You were there. Some mixed opinions on how Dak Prescott performed in that practice. I want to know your firsthand thoughts. How do you think Dak has looked so far in camp?
I thought he's looked great. I think the thing that people need to kind of calibrate their expectations to is that, first of all, this is a non-padded practice. And to many, that would mean like, it's the throws will be easy and that's that it should be simpler. And in reality is that Dak likes to use these kind of these unpadded practices to try different arm angles, to try things out. And even with that kind of context, I felt like he's thrown the ball well. I think, when the balls hit the ground, there's been times when the passes have been contested at the point of attack. But I mean, we saw Dak on Saturday throw a 30-yard dot to Cooks down the sideline, which I think was actually featured on Training Camp Live on the site, if I'm not mistaken. And then another play when they were inside the green zone where CD got a nice little kind of not quite a whip route, but got a rub route and got free in the back corner of the end zone, and Dak placed it there perfectly for him. And just a couple other ones where, Dak was moving across the field, getting the ball down to Tolbert. And just this is not exactly a situation where we're seeing a lot of challenging stuff yet, and this is not exactly the point where today is the day where you're going to start.
You have to make it challenging, right?
Yeah. And so he's really taking that opportunity without, the rush in his face to try different arm angles, just to or different points of launch to see how the ball comes out and that sort of thing. Once the pads start coming on, once the bullets start becoming live, I think you'll see kind of a more accurate version of what Dak will look like, as opposed to a 7-on-7 practice where basically they're just trying to install and review the offense.
And having said that, I still think Dak has looked really good. You mentioned the throw to Cooks. Very easily, like in a real game situation, could have just dumped that ball off to Kevontae Turpin, who we can talk about in a little bit. Ran like a whip route from the slot, was wide open, but you don't really need to practice throwing a 5-yard ball in 7-on-7s. That's not really what you're there for, right? It's to see, okay, where do I have to put this ball for Brandon Cooks? What shoulder do I put it on? How far out can I put it? That's the stuff that Dak and the receivers are trying to figure out early in camp. So when you get to the season, there's fewer of these mistakes and miscommunications. Like I just don't care about 7-on-7 stuff without pads. Really, I don't really care about 7-on-7 stuff with pads. It's one practice, and I thought he looked awesome.
I love the beat writers and the Cowboys, the teams, the guys that cover the Cowboys. But it's for a long time we've seen a lot of these guys, and even the really really good ones like Todd Archer, who's maybe the godfather of Cowboys beat writers right now, right? They will do quarterback charting for like the whole practice and
which Dak was really good in, by the way. I think Todd Archer had the numbers. Like Dak was phenomenal in the quarterback charting.
But that still like seems silly at times because not all those completions are equal, right?
No.
Those it's not like you're
not a
even
game,
comparing,
right?
yeah, it's not even like you're comparing in-game, completions. You're talking about like practice reps where often they're doing stuff that's very specific. They're trying to do a very specific scenario, and so it's a very much a learning situation. It's hard to get too high and too low about what you're seeing in these unpadded practices, and you shouldn't,
No,
because
you shouldn't.
it's a lot of teaching, it's a lot of learning. I think we can get excited about how the players look and how they're physically moving and some of the ways that they're lining up and that sort of thing. But as far as like their performance or trying to progress that forward, trying to get anything out of essentially a flag football game is kind of pointless.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. If Dak were 11 of 11 in 7-on-7 drills and throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, it doesn't really matter, right? But if he's not making the right read and he's just dumping the ball off, that's not what the coaches want. They want him to try stuff. They want him to experiment. They want him to start to get into a rhythm with some other receivers outside of CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup, right? So that's what I care more about is Dak being aggressive in these drills? Is he pushing the ball down the field? And I think the answer to both of those questions is yes.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. He's pushing the ball down the field. And that's one thing I think you brought it up. As they kind of change the system, we'll see a more West Coast system. It's going to be more tied to his feet. Are they going to continue to be aggressive throwing the football down the field? Look, again, these practices aren't a guarantee of anything, but they certainly aren't backing off of throwing the ball down the field, especially to Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, I think they're going to take a lot of shots down the field. At the same time, after practice on Saturday, Dak Prescott spoke with NFL Network, and he talked about, hey, the goal is to get rid of the ball quicker this year and be quick and accurate. One of the players that he mentioned, I just want to bring this up really quickly.
Yeah.
Who could potentially help this offense after the catch is Kevontae Turpin.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm always really cautious about these type of receivers, having great training camps and then not translating into the season. But do you buy that Kevontae Turpin could actually be a part of this offense?
Yeah, I mean, simply because this isn't like I'm going to bring his name up again. This isn't like John Vea Johnson where this guy is trying to earn a role on the team and he's just trying to find a level of consistency to help him make the team. I mean, Turpin has got a spot on the team. Like he may not make the team, but it's his spot to lose, I guess is the way to put it. And so they're trying to look for a role for him outside of his normal return duties. They're trying to expand his role. They're not trying to create a role here. So I do believe it a little bit, simply because I feel like there's a good chance that he's going to make the team as the way things are right now. And I think that, they will find ways to use that skill set. I think that the reason I believe this is because it lines up with other things, right? Generally speaking, they are going to try to get the ball out, try to get the ball in their playmakers' hands and have them, win after the catch, right? And if you're going to do that, you might as well get the ball to your kick returner, punt returner type who's a water bug, right?
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. So, I do believe this simply because, we've seen a little bit more of it. You've seen Turpin's commitment to, sticking around Dak and being a throw partner to him and going out to Georgia and all that. And I think that it just makes sense that this is kind of something that they tried to do a little bit of last year. They just didn't feel like maybe they had the time to kind of get things installed. And now
Turpin was also just making the adjustment to the NFL, right?
Absolutely.
Now he's got a full off season of becoming an NFL receiver, knowing this offense, knowing Dak. I don't know how big the role would be, but I could certainly see a bigger role for Turpin this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, right? Is that they're not going to necessarily force anything, but they've already got if you already got him on the game day roster, you might as well have a couple plays in there to utilize his skill set, which is obviously unique. So I do think that they will try to get him the ball in more unique ways this year, simply because he's a guy that likely will be on the game day roster. You might as well make him useful in other ways besides special teams.
Let's talk about the defensive backs covering all of these receivers at Cowboys camp next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That is $200 that you can spend betting on everything and anything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to get the first home run, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. I absolutely love FanDuel. It's where I place all my bets for the NFL, for the preseason, which, yes, we're going to be betting on the preseason here in the next couple of weeks. I cannot wait. Absolutely amazing. There is no better place, though, to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Every dayers, we've got some special things lined up for you this week. We're going to be going 2-a-days. Now that the Cowboys are going to be in training camp, we're going to 2-a-days. So 2 episodes every single day, 1 in the morning, 1 after practice, kind of recapping everything that we've saw. So make sure you guys are downloading the Locked On podcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube, where you will get the shows alerted to you every single day.
Give us questions too. Give us questions to us for the afternoon.
Yes, absolutely. Lane, I want to talk about the defensive backs because we're going to ignore the trenches for a little bit because it's really hard to see what's going on with the trenches without pads. And I'm going to whisper this. It's kind of meaningless. Like it doesn't matter until the pads come on. But I do think you can get some good ideas about the defensive back. So who has stood out to you so far watching practice?
Well, so, obviously Wilson is out and Mukwamu is out as well. So we've seen a lot of these kind of down roster safeties. We've seen a lot of Tyler Coyle. We've seen a lot of Sheldon Redwine. We've seen a lot of just three Bell, Marquise Bell. And one guy that's really stepped up, I think, is Wanye Thomas. He's a guy that they, has been in with the rest of these guys. Frankly, it's just one of these, Coyle, Bell, and
Thomas.
Thomas. I'm always forgetting there because there's so many of them. We're kind of a trio that have been on the back end of the safety roster for a year and a half, just kind of developing. And they've really liked all 3 of these guys. We've heard a little bit more about Coyle and about Bell, I think, because they have a little bit easier translation to game day rosters because they're a little bit bigger guys so that you can easily fit them on a whole bunch of different special teams. But it's been Thomas that has really kind of shown you a little bit of something coming out a little bit. And I think that's one guy that, to keep an eye on. We've talked about Bell, obviously a lot, and Coyle. And Thomas has been part of that trio and is really, of the 3, kind of been the one that's been the most active so far in these first few practices, I feel like.
I'll just interject.
Keep in mind.
Yeah, really quickly. Mike McCarthy, before the Saturday practice press conference, they asked him, who do you see making the biggest leap this year compared to last year? And he said, by the time training camp is over, I don't think anybody's going to improve their stock more than Wanye Thomas. So that's really interesting that you mentioned him. I do wonder, is there a chance that he just beats out Marquise Bell, who was on the 53-man roster all year? Wanye Thomas was on the practice squad. One other thing that I just want to mention is Wanye Thomas has some kickoff return ability. He's also been a punt returner before. I think he could also play free safety a little bit. Maybe they feel like he's got a little bit more, some more hats that he could wear on game day if needed.
Yeah, I would say that he's definitely, of the 3, more of the free safety type, or at least can play the free safety spot a little bit better, or at least has the athleticism type that you're looking for there. I think that, it's funny because they've all felt very close as far as where they are roster pecking order situations. And I think that the thing that has kind of put the other 2 guys ahead of Wanye is what we've talked about, the kind of special teams aspect of this that can really kind of change things. I think that Wanye's kind of changed the angles on that a little bit with his on-field play. So I think that's really where we're seeing kind of the changing of the guard, and or at least the pecking order between those 3 is how he's playing on the field. Not that Bell and completely forget all 3 of these guys. Coyle.
Bell,
not
Coyle,
either one of them
Thomas.
not that either one of those 2 have played poorly so far. It's just that we've seen 30 flashing out there quite a bit so far.
And I have to ask you about Stephon Gilmore. So Trayvon Diggs has been out with a bruised toe. The Cowboys feel pretty optimistic that he's going to practice this week or next week. Just being careful there.
Can I add in
Go ahead.
something real quick? Trayvon Diggs has been running around like a madman in practice. Like he was out there like stretching everything. Like I honestly believe that this is just a extended veteran camp rest day with Trayvon Diggs. He's flying around when plays are happening down the field. You see him sprinting down the field and stuff. So
it's also not a bad idea because you've got so many young cornerbacks that are fighting for spots. I'm going to ask you about Nahshon Wright, Eric Scott, Calvin Joseph in a second. But how has Stephon Gilmore looked through the first couple unpadded practices?
This is just very clean and smooth. Like it's just it's a veteran corner. He's just like no wasted movements. He knows exactly what he's doing. Anticipating routes. It's just very. When you see young corners that are like super athletic, it's frantic. It's all energy. They're all like balls of energy. So they're explosive, but they're moving in all kinds of different directions. Sure. With these veteran guys who really, really know what they're doing, and it's all in their head. It's like everything is anticipatory, right? Like everything, they know exactly where their feet are going. They know they're going to turn their hips here. They know they're going to slide up the field. So it looks like they're moving slower in motion, but they're moving at still the same speed as everybody else. And that's, that's kind of true smooth, right? That's what he looks like. He looks like a guy that's just knows exactly what he's doing and kind of not having to guess or not screwing up, not having to recover, just be kind of constantly keeping it all in front of them.
And what about Eric Scott, Nahshon Wright, Calvin Joseph? Any of those guys standing out to you?
Scott, I tried to notice a little bit of he was getting some work in some of the kind of 7-on-7 stuff, and was up to it, was being thrown at like short and making tackles and everything. I didn't see anything super noteworthy from Scott on Saturday's practice. Like apparently it's been happening the other days, but he looked fine. He definitely looked the part.
Looks like an NFL DB.
It definitely looks like a starter corner. I mean, he's a big guy with length and like he looks very much like a Dan Quinn guy. So I see the hype. I'd like to see him play out a little bit more. And then who was the other? Nahshon Wright. Wright, I think Wright has picked up where he's left off last year. Where you see it with there's a snap where he plays it perfectly. His body does it. When he does it right, you don't notice that he's 6'3" or whatever.
6'4".
And so what it is that he looks smooth. He keeps it all in front of him. And his game is going to need to look more and more like Gilmore, because I think it's really about that kind of having the confidence to know what you're doing and be able to move your body in the way that is, keeps you from being put in a disadvantageous position. He doesn't have the kind of, the contrast with him is always Kelvin Joseph, right? Who is just insanely twitchy, has the most fluid hips maybe on the team. But is just kind of all over the place, right? He uses that hip flexibility and that speed to kind of help him recover, because he's kind of just going in all directions. Whereas when Wright does it well, it's all very looks very smooth. It looks very in control.
Oh yeah,
it's low, and he's very difficult, obviously, at the point of attack to beat. And then but we're still seeing it where he needs the consistency. That's the issue with Wright. Needs to kind of do it on every single down. I saw him make. Have 3 great snaps and then one where he gave up a long play, and it was like, I need you to finish the practice all positives, right?
Yep.
And like
he needs to be more consistent. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Lana, let's talk about what we're excited to see at the Cowboys' first padded practice on Monday next. All right, Lana, the Cowboys have their first padded practice on Monday. What are you looking forward to seeing in this practice?
Well, first things first, we got to talk about Mozzie Smith. Obviously, he was the first round pick. We've seen him out there. We've seen some interesting kind of padded stance stuff that I think is important, because we want to see exactly what he's going to look like getting off. I think the other part of what we need to see is the rest of the offensive line. I think Mozzie is kind of the headliner because we haven't seen much of him yet. But I still want to see, where Biotish is, where Tyler Smith is at guard, and those sort of things. Linebacker play is obviously going to be important as well here, as well as running backs. Like, obviously everything that's involved in the box is super important today, just because we got to see what it is. So Deuce Vaughn is going to be really interesting to see today. It'll be interesting to see if Pollard is participating today. We need to see a little bit from Malik Davis and Rico. That was it again.
Rico Dowdle.
Rico Dowdle. And we need to see, exactly where those guys are. And so the running backs, I think, are obviously a big part. Linebackers, because this is really where they start to show. And then like I said, the trench guys, we need to see Mozzie, and not even just that too, but like, how are they lining up? Like, are they using any kind of interesting formations on defense to kind of take advantage of the fact that they have Mozzie and Hankins? So all that will be really interesting to see kind of how it gets played out. Basically, just everything in the trenches is important, but I'm starting with these defensive lines, specifically Mozzie Smith, to see where he's at.
Yeah, Junior Fajoku is another guy I want to see, just where they line him up and how he looks. Is he overwhelmed playing inside? Just somebody that I'm keeping an eye on. I also really want to see that left side of the offensive line, like Tyron Smith and Tyler Smith. It's been we have not really gotten to see this in pads for a year now, them playing together, and now Tyler Smith has got a year under his belt. Are those just those two guys on the left side just absolutely dominating? Is it a little clunky? I think we'll find out pretty early in camp how they look like. And then the right guard spot. I mean, you and I both think Zach Martin is going to be here relatively soon, despite maybe what Jerry Jones says to the media. But in the meantime, what does it look like? What does it look like with Terrence Steele coming back from his ACL injury? Who's playing right guard? Is it Josh Ball? Is it Chuma Adoga? I just want to see how those guys look.
Yeah, and well, let's go and all these guys that are kind of coming in as sort of younger players that are going to be important backups. We need to see those guys as well. So we haven't gotten a ton of reports, and even the reports we've gotten, I mean, again, it's non-padded, so it's really important that we focus on that stuff. And then obviously, the rest of the team and how they react in pads, because obviously it's a physical sport all the way around. And
just stay healthy. That's the most important thing. Just stay healthy.
Upright, stay off the ground, as the coaches keep yelling throughout practice. Stay off the ground. Stay off the ground. So we'll see exactly, how that all plays itself out. I think it's really important to see just how physical these guys are at some of these other positions that we don't kind of get to see that physicality.
I also want to see, can they finish practice without Micah Parsons just ruining every 7-on-7 or 11-on-11? Because so far, I mean, in the clips that I've seen, he's absolutely dominant. Now, I know it's not fair that he's going against Chuma Adoga one-on-one sometimes on that right side, but hey, if he's going to get matchups like that, he's going to have to absolutely eat, and he is.
Yeah, absolutely. It was funny, they had a drill where they were doing races, getting off the line of scrimmage, and DeMarcus Lawrence beat Parsons in one of them. Actually, I think he beat him in two of them, and it was pretty funny, like how DeMarcus Lawrence would not let Parsons down on that.
Yeah, so, DeMarcus Lawrence, pretty quick guy, despite being as big as he is. So.
Yeah, there's a reason he's good too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. Again, every day. We're going 2 times a week, all week long with Landon out. 2 times a day, not 2 times a week, 2 times a day. With Landon out and Oxnard, as Jerry Jones would call it. Be sure to follow us on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Landon for camp updates at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. We'll see you guys next time.